Hello and welcome to another episode of Green Pulse, an environmental podcast by the Straits Times, where we aim to bring a Southeast Asian perspective to global environmental issues. I'm Ang Ting.
And I'm Shabana Begum. We are here at the Fashion Pulpit for the fourth ST podcast session celebrating 180 years of the Straits Times.
So actually, in a way, both of us are kind of guests on this show because we are hosts for the award-winning Green Trails. And today, but for this episode, we are at Green Pulse, and we'll be looking at how humans and wildlife can better coexist in Singapore. So today we're joined by two very special guests, more special than us. Our first guest is Kalai. Kalai is the Chief Executive of the Animal Concerns Research and Education Society. Very long name, but more briefly known as ACRES. Founded in 2001, ACRES is an animal research organization that aims to build a society where animals are treated as sentient beings. Kalai, welcome to the show.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Our second guest is Jasvik, campaign manager from Our Wild Neighbours, an initiative that promotes human-wildlife coexistence in Singapore. Jasvik, thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks.
So we were just talking about macaques earlier. These days, it appears that not a week goes by without some kind of human-wildlife incident making the news. So last week, a video of contractors using water guns to ward off monkeys in housing estate in Punggol surfaced on social media. So the northern Punggol area, some background, formerly forested, has become a recent hotspot for human-wildlife clashes. Last year, I visited the estate for Green Trails with your former colleague Anbu, as well as primatologist Andy Ang. And they were telling me that soon macaques will be climbing the new HDB flats. So back then, it was hard for me to believe, but this year there have been so many reports of residents having had to deal with macaques entering their homes. So encounters with urban adapted animals are expected to increase as more housing is built near forested areas and as we as a city in nature weave more greenery into the urban areas. So Kalai, do you think the current approach for managing conflict between people and wildlife is strong enough?
I think that it's not, in a nutshell, but also I think it's not about what measures we have, but also when are we implementing the measures. So I think one of the things is we often wait way too long. So in the case of Punggol, for example, we should have known long ago, at least a decade ago, that when the Punggol developments were happening, that one day this will happen, because back then, 10 years ago, there were already macaques there. So was there any planning in place to cater to that? I think not. So we waited way too long, and now we're trying to catch up with solutions. And that is why it resulted in the use of the gel guns and all that. So I think that one thing is we don't have enough solutions on the ground. But that's fine. That's something we need to explore, because this urbanization is something still new to Singapore, and we have different species that we need to handle also. But at the same time, we should be planning way ahead, because in a development stage, if we reach out to future residents and tell them that, look, you're going to be by the coastline of a beautiful reservoir, you have Coney Island, you're going to see wildlife. Please come with the expectation. Then at least we can mitigate some of these issues. Yeah.
So Jasvik, you've been educating people about interacting with wildlife, right? So do you think that the current approach is adequate?
I think there are a lot of efforts being done in Singapore to kind of balance between wildlife, nature, and urban living. But of course, there are challenges. So I think the main thing is to steer away from thinking how to manage the problems, but more of how we can foster coexistence. Yeah, how we can go forward with it. So we want to expand and make knowledge more accessible to people rather than, always complaining to the government. So for example, for Our Wild Neighbours, we have recently launched the multilingual advisory. So these advisories is not only in the 3 languages, which is Malay, Tamil, and Mandarin, but it also includes other languages like Tagalog, Bengali, and Burmese, to reach out to the migrant workers so that at least they have the basic knowledge on what to do, what not to do. And this will ensure that they will be able to coexist with the animals that we have here, rather than always trying to seek for some form of help from someone else when they themselves can actually do their part to coexist with the animals. Yeah.
So actually, do you all get any calls from migrant workers to help, manage human-wildlife conflict?
Yeah,
I'm
we
sure,
do,
yeah.
especially in construction sites. It could be a safety supervisor, but very often it could be the migrant workers also who actually find our number, they Google it, and they call us for helps with wild animals of different species.
Is there any particular kind of animal they encounter very often? Or-
Snakes.
Oh, okay, like
Yeah.
species.
So snakes is something that I think when it comes to reptiles, there's an inbred fear in a lot of humans. Lah. And especially for migrant workers, because where they come from, if they're from Bangladesh or if they're from Thailand or India, the cases of snake bite fatalities, it's a real thing. Especially in the villages, the hospitals could be very far away. So they take that fear here. So they're often very fearful of reptiles. Yeah.
Right, and then I guess how do you all, what do you all communicate to them to help them understand better?
So this is the usual thing, don't go near. If you're fearful or something, if you see a tiger, nobody's going to approach a tiger, right? You know what's going to happen if you see a tiger in the wild. But for some reason, for reptiles, people tend to take matters into their own hands. That's when they try to handle this animal on their own, or they kill the animal, or they abuse the animal. So we tell them, don't go near. Just keep an eye and wait for us. For us to come down, we will explain to you what the animal is, why is the animal there. You're doing construction, you're clearing land, the animals are losing their habitat, so you're trying to figure out where to go next. So everything that we do has an educational aspect to it, which is very important. And a lot of migrant workers, they're actually very accepting of all these explanations we give them. Yeah.
That's good to hear. So, I mean, all these sort of lessons didn't come from nowhere. Both of you come with a wealth of experiences with animals and humans. One more pleasant than the other. I mean, I'll let you figure out which one it is. But so is there any particular animal that you've had a very memorable encounter with?
So if straight up just memorable, then it's the dolphin for me, because I had the experience of rescuing a dolphin at East Coast before in 2018. But other than that, on a daily, that's a very rare occurrence. But on a day-to-day basis, I think very often in a daily, when you go and rescue animals, you'll see so many cases where people, I don't want this animal here, take it away. What are you talking about? What do you mean coexist and all that? But for every, 5 to 10 people you meet like that, you come across 1 or 2 people who will be like, oh, no, I want you to go and check that the animal is fine. Then please come and release it back into my house. I see them all the time. Or, when we have baby animals, they're perfectly fine for us to reunite it with the parents. Sometimes, wild animals get separated in urban areas. So, a lot of people are understanding in that sense. So those always give us good memories. Yeah.
Jeswick, you?
Yeah, for myself, it's probably not a very beloved animal. So mine is actually a wild boar. Yeah, so when I was walking along MacRitchie Nature Reserve, and then I heard this rustling sound beside me. So I took a peek inside the vegetation, and then I saw a whole family of wild boars with piglets, the adults. But they were just minding their own business. They were foraging, they were going past me. And then an adult wild boar actually stopped and looked at me. So we were in very close proximity. So probably around just 4 to 5 meters apart. Yeah, so I also slowed down my pace. And then we kind of just walked together. Yeah, but of course I didn't had eye contact with the wild boar. I just made sure I go along my way, but calmly. And it was a very nice experience because the wild boar didn't do anything. He just sniffed the air and then just went along the way, followed the family. So I felt it was something very memorable because it's like there's this mutual understanding between both of us that neither of us are a threat to one another. We were just minding our own business. We were just sharing this space at the same time. And we just went along our way.
No, that's very heartening to hear. I mean, because there's so many reports about how, I guess the media has a part to play sometimes, some media, about wild boars attacking humans and that sort of thing. So to hear something that you can hold space, I guess, for each other, that's kind of a very sweet moment.
They don't actually want conflict with us. Yeah, a lot of time is because there's a trigger, something that frightens them. Or because wild boars, they generally do not have very great eyesight. Yeah. So they rely a lot on their smell or their hearing. So any loud sound will actually scare them despite their size. So that's where they run in any direction to run away from the threat. Yeah. So it's more of a matter of being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Yeah. Accidents do happen.
So it's kind of about just understanding their behavior and how they respond. So they're a bit like Singaporeans, they have poor eyesight.
Yeah.
Sorry again. But anyway, back to our program.
We know that despite our best efforts, despite the heartening story that Jesvik just told us, there will be some people who have mistrust in animals, who dislike wildlife. And we see that, in the comment section on social media, for example. So for the both of you, what do you think are the biggest challenges when it comes to changing the minds of people who are distressed by urban wildlife, who are like, going to Calais and saying, I don't want the animal to be here. Why does it keep coming into my house?
I guess the main thing that makes people dislike animals is because of like deep-rooted fear, misinformation, things that like tales that they have heard from their family. Yeah, that is passed down through generations. So I always believe that to a certain extent, like fear is nurtured, it's not nature. Yeah. So we have to educate people and make them recognize that every species has a role to play, whether you like the animal or not. Yeah, they are there to help our ecosystem, to help our environment. So like, let's say for the pythons, some people are uncomfortable with the pythons living in our urban space because of how large they can grow, or maybe the media have shown like them eating people. Yeah, so it's this kind of information that we consume that shapes our impression on the animal. But we don't realize that these pythons actually help us control the rat population because that's what they feed on in Singapore. Yeah, so it's more of like speaking and connecting with people and trying to let them understand that this is what the roles that the animals play here. Yeah. So that we can move forward and create a better relationship with wildlife here.
Yeah. And there's also, urban wildlife, there's many of them, and some are treated more kinder than others. Like, you see your hornbills at your balcony and you get very excited. But then, and you see your otters frolicking around the reservoirs and they get very excited. But when it's crows, pigeons, pythons, wild boar, people get afraid or they just don't want them in their backyard. So how do we change those mindsets? Because, a part of me wants all urban wildlife to be treated equally.
I think that we don't think that everyone can be expected to like wildlife, and neither are we looking to do that. I think different people have different opinions of wildlife, animals. That is fine. And it is true. So some animals are more charismatic. Even if you look at otters, if you go back a decade, the Singaporeans' love for otters was very immense. And then there came a point of time when after a few incidences between otters and people started disliking otters. And then the wild pigs actually started becoming the underdog, where people would be like, people don't like wild pigs. They're very biased against the animal. Otters are too loved and all that. So there's all this, different mentality among people, and it is true. Some animals are seen as more charismatic. If you're talking about crows also, they're actually technically not native, but they're here because at some point humans brought them in, same as pigeons. So a lot of these animals, we brought them in here. They established a colony. They're adapted here. So then to start to resort to culling them, we think it's a bit inhumane at times, But, some of the other challenges are also like the things people talk about on social media. I think like Jaspreet brought that up. Sometimes people say the wrong things, like python also. We have heard 1,001 myths about pythons. These pythons in Singapore, they can eat people. Do you know they will, if the child is there, if the juvenile python is there, the mom is around lurking to eat you. So it's all these myths and misconceptions that are not addressed yet as well.
So actually, what are some of the common myths that people have, like buy into for wildlife in Singapore?
During COVID, it's not a myth, but during COVID, people started hating bats badly. So we started to get a lot more calls about bats. People who never even knew there were bats around started venturing out and searching for bats roosting in the trees. Then they will call us, and they'll call us and tell us, look, there's this family of fruit bats roosting in my mango tree. Can you kill all of them? Yeah. Then, there was one particular household, I'm sure there were many, where they actually put a mist net across the whole swimming pool to trap fruit bats. This was during the COVID pandemic because he heard about how COVID could be related to bats. So when he did that, all these bats got stuck in the mist net. But it didn't occur to people that, even if COVID is related to bats, that's probably happened because bats were being sold in some farm and all that. And you know how, when you stress wild animals, it's going to trigger and then they're going to get sick and then they can spread to people. So by actually trapping the bats, you're putting yourself closer to danger. So people often take matters into their own hand just because they hear something, on the news that, in this case, COVID could be related to bats. For snakes, there's so many different myths, pythons that eat. While it is true that in some countries pythons have eaten people, that there's no denying that, but at least in Singapore's context, it is almost not possible because the pythons here are so small. But people tend to think that, when they think about snakes, they think about, I don't know, Medusa, and they tend to think that they're just evil animals out to harm people, which is so far from the truth because snakes, honestly, I've been rescuing animals for 15 years. Snakes are the easiest animals to handle because once you know how to handle them, once you know the temperament, it's very easy to work with. They're just going about doing their own thing, trying to, live. So a lot of myths. Civets is another one. Again, not a myth, but they tend to connect it to SARS. Some of the older people here might remember SARS. It was connected to civets back then. So people still have that fear of civets here. Or they might start thinking they are like raccoons in the US and how they will start raiding a trash bag and can spread diseases and all that. So people have a lot of fear of wild animals and their diseases. But actually, if you just let them be, then you can coexist.
Jasvik, do you have anything to add?
For snakes is mainly like, people always think that, or at least during the road shows that I go to, they think any snake bite will kill them. But snakes, we do have like non-venomous, we have mildly venomous, then we have the highly venomous. And most of the time when people hear non-venomous, they will say, oh, these are non-venomous, that's why it's harmless. But it's not true because even if you think about it, harmless meaning it doesn't hurt you, it doesn't inflict any wound on you, right? If you don't provoke any animal, snake, civet, bats, it will not harm you. Yeah, it's same as a person. Like if you come towards me and next thing you know, you start like poking me or punching me in the face, I will try to defend myself. Yeah, so that's where we come into conflict with one another. So even for a snake being non-venomous, it still can bite you. Yes, it may not kill you, but you have to understand that animals react in certain way out of defense. Yeah. So it's not so much about the venom, it's not so much about the species, but any animal will react in self-defense. Yeah.
Thanks. So actually, we've talked a lot about behavior, like spontaneous encounters, but I want to talk a bit more about planning for the future because, as temperatures rise, spaces for nature will shrink and more land will be reclaimed also. So how do you think, Singapore can better plan for people to live in harmony with nature?
For myself, at least personally, I've always been thinking about our architecture because we are so developed. Yeah, and when we build like all the tall buildings, we are starting to put in a lot more greenery to either beautify the space or to make the space much cooler. But we also have to understand that these buildings with glass, they do affect the birds that are flying around. Yeah, so that's where a lot of window strikes happen. Yeah, so architecture do play a huge role also, but not only for birds, for any other animals also, because like for OWN, when we go out to roadshow, we do share with people on exclusion measures, preventive measures on how to prevent unwanted visit from animals going into their houses. So this also goes into play when there's a design for different architecture. Let's say if HDB knows that this area has a lot of macaque visits, how are we going to plan it in such a way that we can prevent these macaques from coming in? So rather than waiting for a problem to happen, you actually have a idea of the area, plan it well, and then that's where we can learn to coexist. Yeah.
I think that, we have a very vast park connector system here. But I think, whatever pockets of secondary forest we have left, we should protect them. In Singapore, there's this very bad habit of whatever green spaces we have, we will just cut down and clear for housing. And, me growing up, right, just in the last 15 years that I've been with Acres, the number of areas we could release our animals have been lost tremendously. There's so few places to release a lot of the animals we rescue already. So I think that we cannot be limited to just the park connectors or the parks we have. There's a lot of secondary forests out there. Very little left, but whatever is left, we should protect them. Then, like Jasvik said, architecture is a good thing. But also from another point of view, where we are often trying to struggle how to control the population of pigeons, miners, and crows. Especially for miners and pigeons, they are nesting in urban areas. So if we can start thinking ahead how we can reduce using architecture, how to reduce the chances of them breeding or nesting in urban areas, then we no need to spend so much effort trying to cull them as well. At least it's a more humane approach, and the planning needs to start now. If you go to a lot of housing estates now, the sheltered walkway, all these are like a haven for a lot of birds to build nests. Yeah, it's nice. I enjoy it, but obviously a lot of people are complaining about it, and that triggers the system where in the end pigeons get poisoned or the miners get trapped. So solutions can help a lot to encourage some animals to breed and some animals where we don't want the population to exceed to control them as well. The other way is I think a lot of people still don't know what wild animals we have in Singapore. If you ask, probably all are going to say monkeys, otters, maybe snakes in general, but we have over 60 species of snakes. So I think a lot more awareness is need to be done on the ground to not just tell people what wildlife we have here, but what they can do when they see an animal. How do you react? If you encounter an otter, what do you do? If you encounter a macaque. So just talking about Punggol macaques, we've been doing a lot of outreach on the ground here. So we've been telling a lot of people, when you see a macaque, you shouldn't smile at the macaque. And they're like, huh? What do you mean? So it sounds so silly, right? But it's true, when you smile at a macaque, to them, it's like a sign of aggression. You're challenging me. So a lot of people don't even know that. So there's a lot of knowledge there that we need to share with people. But above everything, I think that there's one theme that is compassion that is lacking. We don't have compassion in our system. People often like, I don't want wildlife here means I don't want wildlife, just remove it. So we need to start from the young, from youths or even younger, we need to get compassion instilled into them. Yeah.
So on this topic of getting youths involved, there are many people here tonight are young people. How do you think young people can contribute towards managing encounters with human and wildlife? Because earlier, Kalei, you mentioned that before an area gets built up, you need to start planning. You should have known 10 years ago that the macaques will come. So what can young people do? It could be neighbourhood initiatives or even planning with their MPs for that matter. What can they do to start planning and ensuring that they're able to manage human-wildlife conflict and prevent, many Punggols from spreading?
Unfortunately, I don't think many Punggols will spread. Punggol probably is the last stand for that amount of macaques. The other macaques are all confined in the central catchment. There are one or two, in other areas of Singapore. But I think it's a bit challenging for young people to do, like work with the town councils and all that. But if you look at Punggol, for example, I'll just use Punggol as an example. And where if the young people living there, they can, find out more about what OWN does, what ACRES does, what MParks, what JJIS does do, and then learn stuff and help to spread the message. What a lot of NGOs or even MParks, what we are missing is we are all trying to spread awareness. Don't feed the wildlife, don't do this, no, you can do this, don't do that. But we don't have enough people to be a catalyst and actually spread the word further. So young people can actually go and spread the word. If you see someone feeding a macaque, which is still happening at Punggol, you can go and report them or actually go and talk to them, because a lot of the feeders are actually the elderly and they have this issue where they just like to feed animals all the time. And this is where, even the government struggles to find them, because how do you find a elderly lady for feeding monkeys $5,000? It doesn't look good for anyone. So you need to talk to them and engage them. That is one area that youth can help also. And also the social media, you can use social media to spread the proper news, proper, word out there about what to do with wildlife as well.
Yeah, on the note of like spreading the message also, is also like volunteering. youth can volunteer for different groups. So like for OWN, we do a lot of outreach. They can come on board, they learn about our native wildlife, and they can spread the word to other people as well. And then they can also volunteer with ACRES, either doing wildlife rescue work or animal care for those animals that are still rehabilitating in the center, or also outreach because they also have an education team. The other thing I also believe is that everyone should make use of their skill sets, their talents. You know, a lot of different disciplines can actually contribute. So like whether you are in arts, you are doing engineering businesses or even tech, you know, all these things do actually contribute to helping us to spread the message of like coexistence or conservation work. Yeah. So these are ways that youth, not only youth, anyone can actually do their part. Yeah.
So I think we talked a lot about needs. There seem to be like a lot of problems, a lot of issues, and a lot of areas to resolve, right? But I kind of want to leave on a hopeful note. So I mean, what is like one thing that you're hopeful for like this human-wildlife conflict situation in Singapore? Maybe we can start with Kalai.
Having discussed all of this, I also think that in the last 15 years, that is in relation to how long I worked at ACRES, there is a slight improvement in how, I don't want to use this word, but how tolerant people are of animals or how willing they are. There's more understanding. I see it more on social media where, you know, these animals have nowhere to go. They have lost their habitat. 15 years ago, I did not see much of such sentiments online. Now I see it more where people understand these animals no longer have a home. So they have no choice, but they're adapting to our urban environment, and they're doing a very good job at adapting to our urban environment. So people do understand that the animals have no home. They accept it more, but the vast majority, I think, are the ones making the loudest noise. So it is good, but we still have a lot of work to do on the ground to reach out to a lot of people who are not accepting the animals yet.
Yeah, for myself I'm actually very happy to be part of OWN, our Wild Neighbours, because it's a collaborative effort and it's relatively new. It only launched in 2022, but for years and years, we have always thought of like, you know, what can we do together? Yeah, so for all the groups to come together and then decide that, hey, we want to do outreach, we want to speak to the people, I think that's something very heartwarming and also something to look forward to in the future where we are more wildlife friendly in Singapore. And also one thing that I enjoy during outreach during our own roadshow is that we don't only engage in like a one-way conversation. It's not like I teach you about this and then you just go home and forget. We always try to connect. We try to have conversations and then we share our experiences. And that's where people are more receptive to what we have to say. And then we also have to empathize. So the main thing is that coexistence really starts with empathy for the animals. Yeah.
And you all have seen that's possible.
Yeah.
So that's it's good to know. So on that note, you've given us a lot of food for thought. So I mean, well, that wraps up for this episode of Green Pulse. I'm Ang Ting.
And I'm Shabana Begum. You can email us your thoughts on this episode. Links to our articles are in the show notes. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.